I'm 31, and I think one of the most confusing kinds of relationship collapse is the one where the other person can point to 100 things they did for you, and every single one of those things still somehow leaves you feeling smaller. No cheating, no dramatic affair reveal. No one got arrested, no lamps were thrown across rooms. If I tried to explain it to someone who hadn't lived through it, I'm not even sure I would have sounded convincing at first. Because on paper, he looked supportive. He helped with forms. He reminded me about deadlines. He made plans. He checked in constantly. He wanted the best for me. He worried about me. He wanted structure. He wanted me to get back on track. What took me way too long to understand was that there is a difference between support and occupation. And once someone starts treating your life like a project they are entitled to run, it becomes very hard to remember that you are still supposed to be the one living it. His name is Rowan. He's 37. We were together just over 2 years. When we met, it was easy. That was the trap. We did not live together. We saw each other a few times a week. We had our own apartments, our own routines, our own laundry, our own exits. It was one of the first adult relationships I had where independence did not feel like a threat. I could miss him and still breathe. I could leave his place and still feel like myself. He was older, stable, organized in a way I found calming at first. He paid attention, remembered dates, brought me little things I mentioned once in passing. He seemed like one of those rare people who actually noticed the details instead of waiting for their turn to talk. And because my previous relationship had involved an astonishing amount of chaos disguised as passion, Rowan's steadiness felt like relief. I mistook his control for steadiness. That was my first mistake. At the time we got together, my life was actually going pretty well. I worked as a copy editor for a mid-sized publishing company. Nothing glamorous, but I liked the work. I liked structure. I liked turning messy drafts into something coherent and clean. There is something deeply comforting about fixing sentences when your own life is not always that tidy. Rowan worked in logistics and procurement for a regional hospital network. He loved systems, loved order, loved the idea that every problem could be reduced to a list, a timeline, a spreadsheet, and a person willing to follow instructions. That last part sounds harmless until the person becomes you. The first year with him was mostly good. He was attentive without seeming clingy, thoughtful without looking performative. He brought over groceries when I was sick, drove me to an emergency dental appointment once when I had a cracked filling and was too embarrassed to ask anyone else. He made dinner. He handled practical things. If I mentioned a problem, he often had a solution before I had even finished describing it. At first, I found that comforting, then flattering, then indispensable. And that was probably the beginning of the imbalance, because once someone gets used to being the useful one, they can start confusing usefulness with authority. The trouble began last autumn. I had already been struggling quietly for a while. Low mood, anxiety, one of those slow internal collapses that from the outside just looks like you are a bit tired and less socially responsive than usual. Then the company I worked for restructured. My department got cut. Technically, I was made redundant, which is such a neat, administrative phrase for something that made me feel like a loose screw being dropped out of a machine. I had some savings, not huge ones, but enough that I was not immediately panicking. I also live in the UK, so there were benefits, grants, and job support options I could apply for while I got my footing back. It was stressful, yes, but it was not catastrophic. I had a plan, a slow, imperfect, realistic plan. That mattered to me, because when your life wobbles, your plan becomes the thing that lets you keep recognizing yourself. I told Rowan what had happened. He was sympathetic at first. He held me, told me I was not a failure, told me he would support me through all of it. And I believed him, because at that point, support still meant what I thought it meant. Comfort, steadiness, maybe some practical help if I asked. I did not realize he was hearing something completely different. To him, support apparently meant immediate operational takeover. It started with texts, not sweet check-ins, status requests. Did you finish the application? How many jobs did you look at today? Did you call the benefits office yet? What's the timeline for the housing support form? Have you updated the budget sheet? The first few times, I answered politely because I thought he was just worried. Then the questions multiplied. Then they became expectations. If I went to his flat and wanted to curl up on the sofa and watch something stupid just to turn my brain off for a while, he would say, "We can do that after you've made some progress." Progress. Like I was a delayed construction site and he was waiting for me to justify rest. One night, I got to his place exhausted, genuinely on the edge of tears, and he had built me a spreadsheet. Not a small one. A whole color-coded system. Benefits, emergency grants, housing pathways, estimated response times, weekly targets, daily targets, columns for completion, columns for follow-up. A section literally labeled accountability. He looked proud of it, actually proud, like he had built a bridge. I stared at it and felt this horrible mix of gratitude and dread, because part of me could see the effort, and another part of me knew immediately that my safe place had just been converted into an office where I was now under review. I tried to explain gently. I told him I appreciated that he cared, but I did not want to spend all our time together managing forms. I said I already had my own list and my own schedule. I said what I needed from him was warmth, calm, maybe a little encouragement, not another manager. He looked stunned, then offended, and that was the first moment I saw the deeper problem. He did not hear, "That's not the kind of help I need." He heard, "Your effort is not being appreciated enough." So suddenly I was no longer the person who had lost her job and was trying not to drown. I was the ungrateful woman who could not recognize care when it was handed to her in a spreadsheet. After that, everything got more invasive. He started asking for updates every day. Not, "How are you holding up?" More like, "What did you complete? Why didn't you do the budgeting worksheet yet? Have you followed my order for the applications? Did you call that number I sent you? Why not?" If I said I had done something differently than the order he recommended, he would get this clipped little edge in his voice and say, "I'm trying to stop you wasting time." If I told him some of his suggestions did not apply to my situation, because I had already researched them, he would say, "Can't you just do it instead of arguing? I'm asking for your own good." That line made me feel insane every single time, because there is something profoundly destabilizing about being treated like a difficult child for wanting ownership over your own crisis. The more anxious I felt, the more controlling he got, and the more controlling he got, the less I wanted to tell him anything. Then he started using rewards, not jokingly, not flirtatiously. Actually, he would say things like, "We're not ordering takeaway until you finish that application." Or, "We can go out once I've seen you make some progress." Or my personal favorite, "A little carrot and stick never hurt anyone." Carrot and stick. He was saying that to a 31-year-old woman who had just lost her job, was dealing with depression, and had come to his flat because she thought maybe she could exhale there. I remember sitting on his sofa, coat still on, listening to him say that phrase and feeling this sudden cold disgust run through me. Not panic, not sadness, disgust. Because whatever this was, it was no longer support. It was management with a romantic wrapper. The worst part was that he genuinely believed he was being good. That made it harder. If he had been openly cruel, I could have named him cruel. If he had shouted, mocked me, or told me I was useless, I would have recognized the shape of the damage faster. Instead, he kept saying, "I care about you. I'm doing this because I love you. I'm spending so much time on this. I just want you to succeed." And because all of that was technically true, I started doubting my own reaction. Was I being stubborn? Unreasonable? Too proud? Too avoidant? Was I rejecting help because I hated feeling dependent? Was I sabotaging myself by pushing away the one person actively trying to keep me moving? That is the problem with controlling people who frame themselves as saviors. They make resistance feel morally suspicious. At the same time, my relationship history was haunting me. My ex, the one before Rowan, had also used care as a way to erase me. He was not organized like Rowan. He was messy, inconsistent, emotionally dramatic. But the structure underneath it was weirdly similar. He always knew better what I should do, how I should feel, what was good for me, why my own instincts were flawed, and his version of reality was kinder, smarter, safer. So when Rowan started micromanaging me, part of me recognized it immediately. The other part wanted so badly for it to be different that I kept trying to fix the interpretation instead of the behavior. I told myself, "He's worried. He means well. He's scared for you. He just expresses care badly. He's practical. You're emotional right now? Maybe this is what loving someone responsibly looks like when things get serious." I can't tell you how much damage women do to themselves trying to write kinder explanations for men who are already comfortable overriding them. The fight that broke us happened on a Sunday. I had spent the morning filling out a benefits form, answering 2 recruiter emails, and trying not to have a panic attack over my finances. By the time I got to Rowan's place, I felt like my brain had been scrubbed with steel wool. All I wanted was to lie down and be held for a while. Instead, he opened the door with his laptop already out. He had added new tabs to the spreadsheet. I'm not exaggerating. New tabs. He had found 3 more grants, 2 more backup pathways, a debt management plan I had not asked for, and a list titled Daily Non-Negotiables. I just stared at him. He started talking before I had even sat down. He said he had been thinking about my situation all day. He said I was still moving too loosely. He said I was not being precise enough with my time. He said my energy-based approach was exactly why I stayed stuck. My energy-based approach? Like I was a failed employee and not a woman trying not to disappear under the combined weight of depression, unemployment, and one very controlling boyfriend calling it love. I said, as calmly as I could, "I need you to stop." He kept going. Not louder, worse, calmer. He said, "I know you don't like hearing it, but your own methods clearly aren't working." That sentence did something permanent to me, because there it was, under the concern, under the effort, under the spreadsheets and lists and fake generosity. Contempt. Contempt for my judgment. Contempt for my pace. Contempt for the possibility that I could be struggling and still remain the authority on my own life. I told him I did not want his spreadsheet. I did not want his targets. I did not want to earn rest from him like a child in a reward system. I said I wanted a partner, not an overseer. He got furious then, not explosive but cold. He said I was being ungrateful. He said he had spent hours trying to help me. He said I was romanticizing helplessness. Then he said something I still think about. If you don't want structure, maybe you just want permission to fail. That was it. That was the point where all my confusion evaporated. Because a loving person does not hear, "Please stop managing me," and respond by accusing you of wanting failure, a loving person might misunderstand. They might get defensive. They might even get hurt. But they do not punish you for refusing control. I left, not dramatically. I did not scream. I did not knock over the laptop. I just picked up my bag, walked to the door, and he said, "Are you seriously doing this right now?" And I turned around and said, "No, you've been doing this to me for months. I'm just finally leaving in the middle of it." I have replayed that sentence 100 times since, mostly because it was one of the first things I said in that relationship that sounded like me. Update 1. We did not break up immediately, not officially. That would have been cleaner. Instead, he texted all night. Long paragraphs about love, effort, misunderstanding, communication styles, attachment wounds, and how painful it was that I could turn care into something ugly. That last line nearly made me throw my phone. Because that was his gift, really. He could take your reaction to being controlled and make it look like the original injury. I did not answer until morning, and when I did, I told him very plainly that I needed space and that any version of this relationship that required me to report on my daily functioning was dead. He said he felt abandoned. I said I had felt supervised. Neither of us could make the other's sentence disappear. Update 2. It has been 3 weeks. I am still unemployed, which is not fun. I am still anxious, still taking things a day at a time, still annoyed that my life apparently needed to fall apart for me to finally understand the difference between support and possession. But here are some things that improved immediately. When I wake up, no one is waiting for a report. No one is grading how I handled the day before. No one is withholding comfort until I have performed progress to their satisfaction. No one is telling me what order to save myself in. That quiet has done more for my mental health than all his spreadsheets combined. I did apply for the benefits. I did update my CV. I did contact recruiters. I did call the debt advisor. I did all of it, just not under supervision. Turns out I was never incapable. I was exhausted. There is a difference. Update 3. We are done. He sent one final message saying he hoped one day I would understand that all he ever wanted was to help me become more stable. I believe that is what he tells himself. But stability that requires me to surrender authorship of my own life is not stability. It is obedience with better branding. And I think that is the sentence I am keeping from all of this. If someone only feels useful when they are directing you, they do not want a partner. They want a project that says, "Thank you. I am sad. I am embarrassed. I am still scared about money and work and what the next 6 months look like. But for the first time in a while, my fear actually belongs to me again." That feels smaller than love, less glamorous, less cinematic. It also feels a lot more like freedom.